So in the last chapter we went through casting shadows, and in this chapter I'm going to look at ambient occlusion. Now ambient occlusion basically works by calculating the distance between two objects. So in this scene I've got my floor object is here. So the way ambient occlusion works is, if I just move the sphere down, it basically looks at areas which are close together, and then it kind of adds like a sort of a contact shadow depending on the distance. So it's not actually kind of linked to any light source, it's just simply done using a distance. So as you can see here, the shadow is going to be quite kind of dark in this area here, but then as it kind of spreads out and this gap gets bigger, the ambient occlusion shadow is going to get kind of softer and less visible. So I'm just actually going to move these spheres down close to the ground so we can see the kind of effect of the ambient occlusion a lot better. Just going to move that one down, and I'm going to make my floor a brighter color so I can see it better. So that's quite good. Now I'm going to hit render settings here, and I'm going to right click and add ambient occlusion. Now by default we've got these settings here, minimum ray length, maximum ray length. This is basically this kind of search area. So I'm just going to take a look at my sphere radius. It's about 39, so I'm guessing this gap here is about 2 centimeters or 1 centimeter. So that should definitely fall within the kind of search area. Dispersion is basically kind of softness, how much the ambient occlusion shadow is dispersed, how soft it is. Accuracy, it's set to 50%, and basically we've got this value here, minimum samples and maximum samples, and the higher you bump these up, the better quality it's going to get. And with the accuracy, basically if you set that to a 50%, it's going to look for a halfway value between the minimum and maximum samples. So 54 divided by 2 is 27. It's basically going to aim for about 37 in between these two values. And if I put the accuracy to 100, it's basically going to use 64 samples. And if I put the accuracy to like 1%, it's basically just going to use around 10 samples. So that's what accuracy does. So I like to set my minimum samples to about 32. And I'm just going to render the scene now with these settings and have a look. And I actually might use my interactive render, so I'm going to hit Alt-R. And I'm actually going to turn off the shadows from that backlight, so I can just focus on the ambient occlusion, and we can see, there it is. I think I've got another shadow, yep, here, so I'm just going to turn my key shadow off as well. So that's calculating a lot faster, and there it is. That is ambient occlusion, and as you can see, the portion of the sphere that is really close to the ground is darker, and it kind of fades out, which is what we kind of expected. So I'm just going to mess around with these settings and see how it updates interactively. Just going to put this to the side and put my settings over here. So let's see what happens. So let's have a look now. Maximum ray length 100 centimeters. So I'm going to set this to 500. Let's see what happens. And as you can see, the search area is now a lot bigger, so it's even kind of casting a shadow below the wall there. So I'm just going to take this to 1000, see what happens. And as you can see, the ambient occlusion shadows are getting more and more exaggerated and stronger. So I'm just going to put that back to 500. That was quite a good setting. So by default, dispersion is set to 100%, and if I reduce this down to say 1%, it's basically going to make these contact shadows a lot kind of thicker, as you can see. So it's probably a good idea to keep the dispersion quite high, just by default. might go up to 90. And we can also adjust the color here, so I can maybe tint this blue. Oops. And it should make these shadows blue now. So you could kind of fake a global illumination with this technique, so the room's kind of quite orange. So if I made this sort of similar orange, I can choose screen color, pick this orange here, okay. That's gonna kind of tint my shadows, which is quite cool. And obviously I can make that a bit darker. So it just kind of helps add like an extra layer of realism. And finally, I'm just going to play around with the minimum and maximum samples. So I'm just going to increase accuracy to 100%, and that means it should use kind of 64 samples. Can't really see a difference there. So I'm just going to increase the samples to say 500, something really high. And it's actually something we might not see too well in the interactive render. And that's a render complete, and as you can see, that is a lot softer compared to before. That is definitely a lot softer. So if you can afford to have a really high render time, there's no deadline, you can bump that up and get some real kind of smooth ambient occlusion shadows. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next chapter we're going to take a look at light fall off. So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.